Hi, I'm Tony. Welcome to Sew Lounge. Today I'm going to teach you when to use stay stitching and how to sew it into your garment. Now I'm working with Simplicity 8133, which is a learn to sew pattern. It is a basic wrap skirt. I'm making view A, which is the long wrap skirt. And the good news is this pattern is in print and available to purchase if you want to sew along and make a wrap skirt for yourself. Now, you may be wondering, what is stay stitching and do I really need to do it? After all, it's an extra step to the entire sewing process. Yes, you do, and here's why. Stay stitching is an extra line of stitching that you just sew into a single layer of fabric to hold that line or curve in place. So on this pattern, we have 3 panels, the back panel of the skirt and the left and the right front panels of the skirt. Now the back panel has some darts in it, but the front panels do not. So because there is a slight curve to the pattern piece, we're going to sew in stay stitching to hold that in place while we work on the other parts of the garment, but before we put on the waistband. Now you would use this in any situation where there is a curve to your fabric and when you're going to be doing other stuff with it before you attach a waistband or waist facing. So this will just prevent that top line and that edge of your fabric from stretching out of place so that when you do finally get around to attaching either the facing or the waistband, it's not stretched out and then everything's not going to match up. So it takes a little bit of extra work, but in the long run, it's going to help you get your garment together faster and easier. Before we go to the sewing machine, make sure that your pattern pieces are all cut out and that you have transferred the marks from your pattern to your fabric. So thankfully this was pretty easy. I just had back darts to transfer. There were some little dot markings on the front. So I'm just going to take these pins out of this fabric and release the pattern from it. And then I'm going to put this aside. So let's go over to the machine and I'm going to show you how to do this. So I'm at the sewing machine, and to get started, make sure that you have your machine set to a straight stitch. Stay stitching is just a regular basic stitch. The only difference is where we're putting it and how we're sewing it. So my stitch length is set to 2.5, and which is what I always sew at, and then I just have it on a straight stitch. Now, the thing to know about stay stitching is that you want to sew from the outside of the garment edge towards the inside. So I have this front panel piece, and this is the side seam because there's a notch on it, and then we know that the front is just a straight edge. So we're going to be sewing from the outside along this edge, which is slightly curved, and towards the inside. Now, when you use stay stitching, you want to sew inside the seam line. So standard seam lines on commercial patterns are 5/8 of an inch, unless otherwise indicated. And we are going to sew the stay stitching at 1/2 inch. So get your fabric and let's go in for a closer look. Here is a close-up view, and we are sewing this at a 1/2 inch. I have this handy little magnetic gauge that'll line up on those lines. So that's a 1/2 inch, which is what we're going to be stitching at. And this is our outside seam. So however you have to line up your fabric so that you go from the outside to inside, that's what you want to do. You may sew one side from the front and one side from the back, and that is totally fine. With stay stitching, we are just going to lower that presser foot down. I don't know why my thread's not going in there. There we go. And lower it down, and we're just going to run a stitch line. There are no back stitching or anything complicated, so just sew your stitch line. Make sure that you keep your fabric lined up against that 1/2 inch mark. And let's keep going. And then we're going to repeat that on the other side front panel. Now we're doing the other front panel, and as you can see, to sew it from the side to the center, so that's the side with the notch in it, we have to sew it from the right side of the garment so that we can sew it in the right direction. My needle's still down. Lift up your needle so you don't have any technical difficulties. There we go. So I'm just going to line everything up again, put down my presser foot, and stitch some stay stitching. Up that presser foot, and as you can see, it just looks like a regular line of stitching. The only difference is it's only a 1/2 inch from the edge and it's a single layer. So we did both front panels, the left and the right side, sewing from the outside seam to the center of the pattern piece. Now you may be wondering, oh no, what do I do if it's the back piece is a single piece and there's side seams on both sides? Have no fear, I'm going to walk you through it. So with the center back, which is still on a curve, we're going to sew half of it from the side seam to the center, and we're basically going to go to the center fold of the garment, which you can kind of see is right here. It's still pressed in from when we cut the fabric. So that's the center fold, if you match up both notches. And we're going to sew from the side seam to the center, and then we're going to flip the fabric over and sew from the side seam to the center, and then we'll be done. Let's go in for a closer look. Just like before, we are going to line up the edge of the fabric with our handy gauge that is on the 1/2 inch mark. Drop down your presser foot. You don't want the fabric bunching though. There we go. And then we're just going to stitch to that center mark, and it is, you can see it a little bit better here. There is a, you can see there's a little crease right there. So that's where we're going to be sewing, and it's just past this center notch. So we're going to start from this side and just stitch. And don't go crazy because you don't want to go past the center mark. I'm actually lost it. Okay, it's right here. I'm going to keep my finger there. And I'm going to stop, raise my needle and presser foot, and I'm going to cut off these tails, and then I'm going to flip my fabric over to the other side, get everything all lined up again. Maybe. There we go. This little edge is not cooperating. There we go. Okay, we're good. Lower that down, and then I'm going to start sewing again. Keeping everything lined up, and just going from the outside seam to the center. And as we're getting to the other side, I'm just going to stop because I don't want to cross the other line of stitching. Tear off those tails, and then if we flip it to the right side, you can see here, that's the center. They haven't crossed, and we have stay stitching on both sides. We're ready to start sewing. So now you know how to stay stitch a waistline. And this is really worth your time and effort to prevent your garment from stretching. This isn't a super curved waistband or a waist pattern piece, waistline, however you want to call it. But when you do have more of a curve, or when you're using a yoke, for example, so your pattern piece is really curved, it really helps to hold everything together to prevent stretching. And it's not just for skirts, also can be used for pants when you have a fitted pant that doesn't have darts, or if it's something that's been cut on the bias. So with the bias, it's got a really, it's more stretchy than normal, and that's when stay stitching really comes in handy. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to click like below and subscribe to my channel so you never miss a stitch. And if you've got questions, but no one to answer them, head on over to Let's Talk Sewing for Beginners, hosted by Sew Lounge. It's an interactive Facebook group where you can ask all the questions you want and I will get you some answers. I go live in the group on Wednesdays, so check the schedule for the next event. Until we meet again, happy sewing!